My name is Carlos Walker. This is Art and Hustle Black Authors Matter, and today I'm here with Mr. Antonio Michael Downing. How you doing, sir?
Yo, I'm doing blessed, my brother. It's so honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
Man, it is my honor. So, if you will, share with the people who you are and what you do.
Wow. Um, who I am might be tough, but I'm gonna tell you what I do. Antonio Michael Downing. I am an author of two novels, a novella, a novel, a children's book, and a memoir. I've been blessed to have them published. Internationally and be critically acclaimed, especially my memoir Saga Boy, and my new novel Black Cherokee just came out with Simon and Schuster in August. I'm also a broadcaster. I host a show called The Next Chapter, which is also a podcast for CBC Radio in Canada. So it's a national radio show and a podcast. We talk about books, we talk about writers, we talk about reading. And I'm also a musician. I go by John Orpheus. That's my ego. And yeah, it's lots of different styles over the years, but I call it soul music because it comes from there. So that's what I do.
One, I want to thank you for all that you do, not just being an author, an artist as well, which is all up on the tapestry of artistry. So, thank you for learning to
Amen.
use your gift. As
Amen. I appreciate that.
being that you brought it up, you said today is Sunday and you was just preaching. I'm gonna tell you, the Bible says your gift will make room for you and put you before great men. So thank you
Mm,
for all your many gifts, but how it has escalated you to the prominence that you have become.
hmm
So
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a beautiful thing. I really, I grew up I grew up thinking about those things and hearing the parable, right? The parable of the talents, where it's like, if you don't, the guy who he comes back and says, Master, here's your talents back. I didn't do anything with it, versus Here's your talents back. I made 350% on it. Here you go." I feel, I really feel inspired by that.
and I can understand that that's one of my favorite parables as well. When you understand not to hide what God has given you, then you understand that even if you don't get to where you can see here, you put it
Mm,
to work. And all God wants you to do is try it.
yeah.
Take a shot with it.
Yeah, this is it. I mean, I think you have to, most of success is just showing up. It's not difficult always. Sometimes it's easy, but you do got to show up and do it every day, day in, day out. And that I love the saying that our thoughts create our habits and our habits become our destiny.
Uh, I got a thing that I wrote about gratitude that's based in that. And
Hmm
I forgot where I actually had read that quote, then I utilized it. But as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he.
hmm Right. There it is.
So we'll hear about your books. Share a little bit about what is your favorite work up to date of
I
yours.
mean, it's always, I don't have children, but I feel like they are like children because when I hear parents talk about their children, that's how I think about my books. And so, and all the work that I make is, you go through a gestation with them where they're planted as a seed and you nourish them and they grow, and then at a time they leave your hands and go out into the world, and you can't control what they become, or if they find a life of their own, or if people like them or if people don't like them. And so, just like a father with his children, I feel picking a favorite would be really difficult to do because I love them all very differently. um I think Saga Boy is really important. This is with Milkweed Editions out of um, out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I think it's important because it's a memoir, so it's really about my life being born into a kind of colonial setting in Trinidad where I grew up as a youth, and my grandmother raised me till 11, and she really gave me the foundations of song and story and reading and letters at a young age that have pretty much guided me ever since. Um, and it's the story of how she dies, and within a few days, really, I end up in North America in the middle of a blizzard. And so I go from this Caribbean tropical landscape to this other landscape, still very rural, but also but very, very different. And Carlos, it's kind of like when people say, if I were to ask someone, hey, who are you? They're probably going to say where they're from, who they grew up around, what music they listen to, what their dad did for a living, how their mama raised them. But what if every single thing about who how you define who you are was suddenly pulled out from under you
Mm.
at the age of 11, but you were still here. You still exist. So I think that's the story of my life, and that's the story of Saga Boy. About it's my journey of trying to figure out, well, if all these things that make me are gone and I'm still here, then maybe they're not the things that really make me. Therefore, what is?
Mm.
And so and in a way, that's kind of the origin story. If I were a superhero, that would be my origin event, because I've been trying to answer that question ever since then. And to a large extent, the books I write are about that theme of belonging and home and identity. Like, what does it really mean to have identity? So in Black Cherokee, which just came out with Simon and Schuster, bless up, in August. Like it sounds, Black Cherokee is the story of a young girl who is both Black and Cherokee, based on the history, the actual history of the Cherokee freedmen and the Black freedmen. So there are five tribes who all, at some point, the elites in the tribe had slaves.
Mhm.
And then when those tribes moved, the Indian Removal Act, they moved them out to Oklahoma, out to the west. And those Black folks went with them, and so now, 200 years later, they're part of the tribe, but they're not considered official citizens because by blood, they're not Cherokee, not fully enough anyway,
Mhm.
and according to the authority. But by culture, they're definitely Cherokee, and they have been for hundreds of years. And so, Ophelia in Black Cherokee, she's born into this fictional reserve where the folks have managed to live Black and Cherokee in harmony as part of one thing. And what happens to her, she gets rejected by the Black and rejected by the Cherokee side, and she needs to figure out, well, who am I? So you can see the similarities between my story and Ophelia's story. But in this case, I wanted to locate it in American history. And I wanted to locate it in this intersection of indigenous and black and European, that kind of, the ingredients that cooked up the America we have today. Because I feel a lot of those issues are still relevant today. I mean, in fact, I think all the politics we have are about this, right? Are you in or are you out? Are black people full citizens? Because Malcolm X said, if the Constitution applied to us, there'd be no Negro problem, right? So it's not a question. So the whole problem is not about, hey, do we have systems of rights and justice and equality? It's, does it apply to you?
Mhm.
So are you black? Are you a full citizen? We're seeing that in with this whole ICE thing and all these raids. Do immigrants get habeas corpus and all these rights of law and justice where you can't, your one phone call, do they get red rights? Do they have rights? Are they in or are they out? because we have rights for people, but who gets them? Immigrants,
Mm,
do they get them? What if you're a immigrant with good paperwork? Do you get them? What if you're an
mm.
immigrant without the paperwork?
Do
What
you
if you're
get
an
it?
immigrant who's a criminal? Do you get them? And so we are constantly, queer folks, trans folks, right? If they choose a lifestyle or they live a lifestyle that we wouldn't choose, do they still get the rights that we get? Are they still considered equal citizens? You know, Bad Bunny is at the Super Bowl and he sings in Spanish, suddenly we're like, well, that's not American. Well,
But
really? Because
but Puerto
there's
Rico
six,
is a territory of America.
yeah, and 60 million people in America speak Spanish as their first language. So how can that not be American, right? And so we all, I made Black Cherokee because I saw in this character at the founding, who's influenced by this history of the founding of America, and the peoples that made up America, um, that is still going on to this day. We are still trying to decide who gets life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness and who doesn't. And it's
Mm,
at the heart of all our politics. And so so I feel like Saga Boy is the most important book to me, but I feel Black Cherokee might be thus far the most important book to the world that I've written.
mm. So let me see. You did name, was it three?
Yeah, no, those are two that I named just now, but I also have a children's book called Stars in
That's
My
what I was
Crown.
reaching for.
Yeah, and I also have a novella called Molasses that I did way back when, a very small book, but still in terms of developing of my style, it's a crucial book for me, but really I think Saga Boy and Black Cherokee are
The
the
hearts.
yeah, they're the cornerstones, I think, of what I've done to this day.
I still would love to at least hear about the children's book because me, I as being an author, I understand the importance of reaching children. And if you can get them to start reading early, oh my God, it seems like life is
Hmm.
it's everything is possible.
Yeah, it's a very different life. Like I think if you're a reader, as all writers are, um, you know how different your life would have been if you didn't read. You know all the things that are brought to you. It's a powerful thing that if you can just decipher some markings on some paper, you can be transported to a different place, a different time with different people. You can learn lessons that you never knew. You can experience experiences you never experienced. It is one of the most powerful things that's ever been invented and continues to be. And so, yeah, I wanted to that story. So, Stars in My Crown, and the title is based off of a hymn that my grandmother used to sing a lot. She used to sing, again, is the story of Stars in My Crown is the story of Saga Boy that I just told you. Growing up with my grandmother, she dies, and then I have to come to North America, and the snow and the ice and everything's different, and it's about her teaching me values that are going to stay with me, because really everything changed except for the values that she gave me. And
Which
she called those stars in my crown. When I asked her, Grandma, what are you talking? She said, will there be any stars in my crown, when at evening the sun goeth down, and when I lay myself in the mansion of rest, will there be any stars in my crown? So she'd be singing that. I'd be like, well, Grandma, what are you talking about? What do you mean stars in my crown? Like you put on your head? Like, how does this work? And she told me, she kind of embellished the meaning of the song and said, look, every time you learn a quality that stays with you, like patience, for example, because I was a really impatient kid. It's a star that goes in your crown. And just like the stars don't change no matter where you go, you can always see those stars. wherever you go in your life, those stars in your crown are going to be with you to guide you. And then, so it's the story of me as a kid being confused by that, trying to learn patience, losing her, coming to North America, being completely confused by everything that's going on, but still keeping those lessons, those stars that she gave me in my crown, and having them work for me and keep me and hold me and bless me. So that's the story of Stars in My Crown. So yeah, it's special. I don't think of myself as a children's author, but I think it's a really important book for me as well because it really honors my grandmother and what she gave to me. All my work does, but this one really calls it out in a special way.
One, I want to thank you for sharing that book because I think it also speaks to what you are telling me that you are still discovering when you speak
Hmm.
about who you are after everything was gone. What is your essence?
Yes.
And to me, just listen to stars in your crown, stars in my crown. It's the character.
Hmm.
After everything is gone, money, people,
Hmm.
anything that you can name of, you start to realize what is my character,
Hmm.
not just my gifts. Because I'm an artist. I'm gonna use you. You're an author. You're artist, musical musician. With your voice, as we can see, you
Hmm.
do and have many different gifts. But your gifts are just your gifts. Your character is what shapes,
Yeah.
because it says that your gift to get you in get you in the room, your character will keep you there.
Yeah, I mean, and that's really the answer to the question that I asked earlier when I was telling you about Saga Boy. All the things that define you get swept away, and so you're kind of, but you're still there, and you're asking yourself, well, what are the things that define me? And I think the answer is the characteristics that make you who you are. That character, that is really at the end of the day the only thing that endures.
The spirit of God. I think of what is it? There's nine spirits of the fruit.
Hmm.
You named one of them that you say you didn't have when you was younger.
Yeah.
Patience,
Yeah. The fruits of the spirit, I think, is exactly what my grandmother was trying to teach me with Stars in My Crown.
and that is huge. One, to me, I love hearing about every book, but for some reason, I think even adults need to go and read that book.
Yeah, most definitely. There's a lot of so-called children's entertainment that that has lessons because ultimately we all have a child that lives inside us. Like the child we were doesn't die or pass on. It just takes a back seat. And sometimes we need to listen to that child because a lot of, like, if we it's Sunday and we talk in Bible, so unless you be as one of these, you cannot enter into the kingdom of heaven. And so we actually, that is Jesus saying to us, like, look,
You got to
until
still be as a child.
until you return to your inner child and you nourish that inner child and have deep conversation with them and understand them and face the fears that they feared. And also for me, more and more it's about loving that child because I grew up with my grandma. She died when I was young. My mom and dad were never around, and so I always longed for that kind of love in my life. And a lot
Mm.
of my choices that I made in life with friendships and romance were reflected that deep lacking that I had in terms of wanting to be loved. And so more and more as I get older, I realize that I need to go back and tell and offer that child, that child longed for protection and love and care. And now it's like, oh, well, we don't need that from anyone else. I can do that. I can be like, look, I love you. I care for you. I'm going to protect you. Like, whatever we go through, I'm going to be here with you. And the more you nourish that inner child, the more their imagination. When you think of yourself as a child, a child is filled with unbounded imagination, almost like dauntless courage, like the things we did when we were younger that we would never do now. Um, Almost dauntless courage. So many great things about who we were as children we lose, or we turn the volume down as adults, or failure or disappointment takes it out of us. But reconnecting with that is really what I get from that particular verse about, there's only children in the kingdom of heaven. That's what that says. Unless you are like these, you cannot go here. That means unless every single one of us gets in touch with our inner child, the grace and the glory we are seeking, we will never achieve. And
Also,
that's powerful.
listen to that. It makes me think about belief, the faith system of a
Hmm.
child. Their
Yeah.
belief system is open at the time,
Hmm. Yeah,
and
yeah, it's another fruit of the spirit, isn't it?
so what has your journey been like since you started writing?
It's been interesting because I feel like as a kid, because my grandma taught me to read and write because her eyes were bad and she still needed to read her Bible. So I learned to read and write off of, like, she would get me to spell the word, she'd tell me what it means, get me to use it in a sentence. Next thing you know, I'm reading her Psalms and Proverbs. I'm like 4 years old, right? Not even. And so it was always connected to and she's reading Psalms and Proverbs, so these deep poetic,
Hmm.
wisdom filled parts of the Bible, some of the deepest, the parts that feed the soul directly. And so I always had that with me, and I studied literature in university, probably because I had that, because so much of our literature is influenced by the Bible in terms of the traditions of how we write. So I felt like I was drawn to it because of that, and I was always writing. I was always writing. I kept journals since I was 12. When I went to university, I think college was when I actually started to really grow as a writer, because everything I studied, I tried to write it, which is
Hmm.
unlike the people I was studying with. They were trying to understand it. I was trying to understand it by trying my hand at doing it. So if we studied Shakespearean sonnets, I would write it. I would try to write a bunch of sonnets. If I was reading, like Melville, I would try to write in the style of Melville, you know what I mean? And so that's really where I got my chops as a writer. I might not have known what to write about at that point, but I could form sentences. I understood style. I understood the basics. Um, 2010 was when I first published the novella Molasses. It was a small press, small thing, but I'd been working in tech for a while, for BlackBerry back in the day, those old devices. I used to work for them, and there was a point where, but I always knew that was my path. And so there was a point where they offered a bunch of us a move to a new job, and I kind of said, nah, I'm not going to take this. And I negotiated a salary, a package, so I could leave. And so I left, and I had a bunch of money in the bank, so I didn't have to immediately go find a job. And so I immediately started writing, because I had
Hmm.
so many things that I'd been so busy, and my subconscious was full. And so, and I can remember like yesterday, I sat in the backyard and I had a book and a pen, because I still write. First draft is old school, right? And I love that, because it means when it's done, I have this artifact, I have this book that commemorates the process. So yeah, and And I just sat in this backyard with these huge trees, and the wind was always singing through the trees, and the cicadas and the birds and the squirrels. And I was on this rickety chair that if I leaned the wrong way would just fall over. And I just didn't even move for 2 weeks and wrote this book.
Mm.
and and then and it got published, but I was so busy. I that my music career really took off at that point, and so I was so busy touring and stuff. I didn't really promote it, and part of it was, I think, and this is something about Black folks and reading and as writers. When I was a kid, I remember people telling me nobody cares what you read in a book, and books aren't important, or books are the white man's tools, is the book, right? Like people would say stuff like that. And we have to face it. There's been a lot of books written filled with a lot of lies about who Black people are.
Come on.
And so there's a distrust there, but books are also like doctors. There's been a lot of doctors who have treated Black people to this day. Serena Williams almost died because the doctors didn't believe what she was saying about the pain she had in her
Hmm.
pregnancy. So Black people still get treated like that, but it doesn't mean you should not go to the doctor, right? And so that's how I felt about writing. I was kind of told to distrust my intellect. So it was easier for me to choose music over books because we're encouraged to be musicians, but we're not encouraged to write books. It's not
Mm.
seen as something. And also, it's about having role models. I had a lot of role models who could play guitar, but I didn't have a lot of role models who could,
Mm.
plot out a novel and execute it. So I chose to do the music thing, and then a couple of years later, I felt completely confused. I was like, I guess it's a midlife crisis because I didn't know whether I could go for. I was going for. I didn't know how to go forward. I call it the many jackets because at that time I had my corporate job with my blazer jacket, and then I had my shiny gold, like dance it down kind of showman jacket, musician jacket. But then in life, I was trying on jackets to see how could I live going forward, and none of them really fit. And then it occurred to me that until I made peace with my past, I could never actually truly plan my future.
Mm.
And
Been there.
so, yeah, and out of that came Saga Boy. And then suddenly that I was just hoping that they'd like it. And part of it was I was like, man, I've always wanted to write, but it felt like a distant childhood dream. I didn't know if I was a guy who writes books or if I'm a guy who wrote a book. And so
Mm.
I kind of said, look, write the book. And if you enjoy the process, you're going to know right away whether you want to do it some more. And if you don't, then look, you wrote a book, man. You wrote a book that commemorated your life and what you did and what your thoughts are. Some people are lucky if they write one. So there's nothing wrong with that. But when I finished, I was like, man, this is beautiful. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. So I changed everything in my life. I moved from the middle of the city. I was the heart of the city. I was the urban musician. I was in all the clubs, all the dances. I was throwing my own things. I was connected with all the artists. And I was like, I moved away from all of that back to the college town where I'd first started writing when I was copying all that Shakespeare and all of that stuff. I moved back there and where I had a lot of friends, but where I could go for a walk in the forest if I wanted to, a kilometer from my house. So closer to how I grew up in Trinidad. And I just kept writing. And that's where Stars of My Crown came. That's where Black Cherokee came. And I've just finished a new novel. I just finished a draft to it. So yeah, like since then I just kept writing. So I guess I'm a guy who writes books.
The guy who writes books. It sounds like the journey has been successful for you. And what I like to always inspire people is when doing these and hearing the stories for other people to soak it up and understand that one, we write books.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
and we do it really well, and it's essential for all of us that people write books, that Black people are writing books in this time where literally they are erasing Black stories. Like they're taking Black books out the library. They're changing the names of ships named after Black heroes. You can go, they say at the Naval College, library in Annapolis, I think it is, you can find a copy of Hitler's Mein Kampf, but any book that refers to slavery has been removed. So,
and
so it's
that lets
not
you know
just
some
that we
fear.
do it; it's that someone has to do it for our kids and grandkids and our predecessors. We are the ancestors,
Come
and
on
we
now,
need to provide for them. And the best way we can is in leaving our stories.
document.
Yeah. Leave in our stories so they know that we were here and they can explain and understand like the same way we do,
Hmm.
right? If I read Frederick Douglass, I read W.E.B. Du Bois, I suddenly understand myself in a
Come on,
way that I never could have. And so if we don't right now, 100 years from now, 200 years from now, there's going to be a Black kid who has no idea how this went down.
with
So,
this.
so
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, sorry to interrupt you, but I just thought it was really important to say not only do we write books, but this is a necessary thing we need to be doing. Anyhow you can tell our stories, you need to just be out there telling it. If you got it in your heart, you need to be doing it.
You actually said something. We are our ancestors, or we are the ancestors that
We are
will
the
be.
ancestors. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Uh, when I think about this period of time, in 50 years, they'll be talking about us.
yeah, yeah.
The
They'll be
question
talking.
is, do you want to be talked about?
Yeah, and what will they say?
And what will they say?
What will they say? And I think we always revere the ancestors because they've blessed us. But what we don't recognize is that we are someone's ancestors.
There we go.
We are the ancestors. So the same way we revere them, we must revere the work that we are put here to do because it has a precious function.
We are living history.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's a lot of my like Black Cherokee, for example, a lot of that thought you just said, like living history, a lot of what Ophelia is living in Black Cherokee is she's caught up, like, because we all have personal history, family history, our town's history, our region, our community's history, our nation history, our history as Black people, which transcends nations. Um, And we are caught up in that history, whether or not we know it,
This is
right?
true.
That history will reach out and touch you, whether or not you believe it exists or not, right? It will reach out and shift your possibilities, change your horizons, decrease your choices, increase your talent, right? It will reach out and shake your life. We are all in the grips of it to the point where I don't even think of, in Black Cherokee, the river is the metaphor for history. She
Hmm.
goes out by the river, and they always say about a river, you never step into the same river twice because the river's always there, but of course it's not the same water,
Nope.
right? That water came from over there and it's going there,
It's
and
flowing.
yet the river is a permanence that doesn't stop. And
Mm.
so that's really what we're living. We are living in past and future all at once. Just like the ancestors influence us, we are the ancestors of the future. And so our future, we are the future people being influenced by the ancestors, just like we are the people who are influenced by the ancestors from the past. And if that's true, then those people in the future that we hope to influence, they too are the river. They too are the ancestors,
Mm.
right? So it's kind of you're in this place where past, present, future doesn't matter anymore. We revere each other with the same reverence because all of us are the ancestors, all that
Profound.
have all that have been and all that will be at one time. And so there's a collapse of what we call temporality, like a collapse of time. Time is not a thing where we exist in our at our most essential selves. Time is not something that matters because we can sit here and be in conversation with Du Bois and Frederick Douglass.
Mm-hmm.
And 200 years from now, somebody might be in conversation, might find this conversation and be in conversation with us, or might find Black Cherokee or Saga Boy and be in conversation with us. So really this concept of, and all you got to do to think about that, to understand how flimsy this concept of time is I have conversations every day with my grandmother. And
Yes.
I didn't realize it. Not like I'm remembering what she said back in the day. I do that
you,
too.
you
But
can
but
still hear.
I'll be sitting right here and say, "Well, what you think about Carlos Walker?" And if I close my eyes, I'll hear her in her
Mm-hmm.
own voice answer me and say, "This boy's trying to do the Lord's work. This is your tribe." Okay, thank you, grandma. Right? So it's like, so that's not even a her that's existed
Mm-mm.
in the past, right? Sometimes we have conversations with future selves. We think about, hey, I'm doing, like we're saying, right? I'm doing this so that in the future I can be seen this certain way. So really, the future is in the room, the past is in the room, and it's all
You,
happening now. So really, I'm not worried about time.
mm. So before we go, I do want to thank you for your unfathomable wisdom. It's timeless.
Amen.
And I'm grateful that God has blessed you with the voice, the words to put on paper, the action and willingness to do something in this time that will affect somebody in another time.
Hmm.
To me, that is all that you have said in the last, just say, 5 minutes have been some of the most powerful things that I've heard. I'm one that believe our spirit has lived in the past, the present, and the future.
Hmm.
Because when you was a little baby, it was just a little baby, but your spirit has touched each realm that you will live in. Your body has to grow into it.
Hmm.
But the way that you just broke that in, not only do we deal with our ancestors, but we are the ancestors of someone else. It still gives me that past, present, and future moment.
Hmm. Yeah. And how, and it's by walking as if you're someone's ancestors, that's how you honor the voices of your ancestors.
Because you now gonna stand up and do everything that your ancestors did to make sure somebody else stand up on your shoulders.
Yeah, because, yeah, absolutely. They were just people like us. They were just people like us who thought about their future and they thought about, look, we got to make it through for the babies because they're going to have a better future than this. They're
And
going
that's
to
how
live.
and that's
They're
how
going to
we think.
live. They're going to carry on. Yeah. And so we have to live in this space, this spiritual realm in which time doesn't matter because, or truly, we're seeing with all these backwards and forwards and presently all at the same time.
All at the
We're
same time.
experiencing it all at once. And that's powerful because what it gives me is, what it says to me is that I am not alone. I'm not I'm not an individual. I'm not some fleck, some spark that just lights up and flares out and is gone, but I am part of this long narrative arc that continues and I am just one little section of the pageant, of the
Mm,
parade, you know, that is black people, that is human beings. I am just this one little part of the parade, and my job is to be that part as greatly as I can in order to honor those who handed it off to me and honor those that I will hand it to so that they are prepared to be their part of this this giant pageant that is our that is life and living, and no one knows where it goes or where it ends. But that's not our concern.
Mm-mm. My God. So, if you will, give me a word of wisdom for someone who may be starting their journey, in the middle of their journey, wherever they may be. Give me a word of wisdom for them. And then, as always, and I already know what you're going to say, but tell them where they can find your books, where they can
Mhm.
find you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, I'll do the second part first because that's really easier. Yeah, you can. So Antonio Michael Downing, if you Google me for books, you'll find all the books and available any bookstore that you like to, small local ones, big box ones, online ones. It's all there. Simon and Schuster is the publisher. Penguin Random House is the publisher. Milkweed Editions is the publisher. If you want to hit me up, I've got presence on all the platforms, but hitting me up, Antonio Michael Downing, Instagram, is the best way to reach me because I tend to be on there the most. But you can hit me up with Antonio Michael Downing on Twitter, on TikTok, Facebook, whatever you prefer. For people in the struggle, hmm, well, I guess I'll pass on some of the best wisdom that I've ever gotten, which is there's a book called Letters to a Young Poet by a poet named Rainer Maria Rilke from the 19th century. And basically, he went to a German military school and wanted to be a poet, not the best place to become a poet. So his professor encouraged him. And then 10 years later, he becomes a poet. He leaves the school and becomes a poet. Another kid going to the same school wants to be a poet, meets the same professor, and the professor says, "Well, why don't you write to Rainer Maria? Because he's already walked this journey." And so, this book are the letters that Rainer Maria wrote to this young poet back walking in his own footsteps. So, really, they're letters to himself.
Mm.
They're the things he would have wanted to know when he was that kid. And one thing he says is that, you know, if you cannot do it, don't do it. Just stop. But if it calls you, he says, if it finds you in your lonely moments, if it calls to you in your solitude, if it haunts you in your darkness, and say, yes, I must write, or whatever it is your art is, whatever it is your business is, whatever it is you're trying to make happen. If you are doing it out of necessity, then build your whole life around getting it done. And that's what I would pass on. The moment I realized that I must write, everything about my life that existed before became obsolete. I told you, I packed up my whole apartment. I left the city. I left all my friends. I left the whole life I built successfully in the city. You know, it's hard in big cities. I was making money. I was artistically thriving. I had all the friends. I had all the vibes. I had all the clothes, everything I wanted. The second I realized that I had that calling to write, I left. I shut it all down because that's the voice of God. That's the voice of the ancestors. That is the thing we need to honor. So I would suggest very deeply, if you can stop, stop. And if you get distracted and you go do something else, then that's what you're supposed to do. But if it calls you and it won't let you go, then you know that that's your purpose. And purpose is the only reason to do art, a work of art,
Mm.
because you were meant to do it.
Wow. Thank you for being you. Thank you for doing all that you have done. Thank you for the word of wisdom that you have just given. With that, oh, go ahead. You got something else
Thank
you
you,
want to
No, I was just
give?
going to say thank you, Carlos. It's my pleasure. I am filled with gratitude for being here, brother.
This conversation has been enlightening, truly enlightening. With that, my name is Carlos Walker. This is Art and Hustle, Black Authors Matter, and this is Mr. Antonio Michael Downing. Blessings.